Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Case Me a Christmas Card for 2021. This is Michelle Upton and I'm going to be showing you today how I made this card. Now my guest today for Case Me a Christmas Card is Therese Calvird, who is a fellow Aussie. It's always good to have some Aussies out there in card making land to give us inspiration, and yeah, Therese's videos are truly inspirational. All right, so I'm starting my card today with a stamp set from Hero Arts. It's called the Holly Berries stamp set. And I'm actually going to be doing some partial die cutting. So I'm lining up the matching die after I've stamped this image in Copic Safe ink. And you can see I'm going to be lining it up with my top cutting plate, basically cutting it on an angle there. So I've cut that, so it's only going to cut just where that top cutting plate was. And because it wasn't on an angle, I can actually cut it off with my trimmer here, in between all little bits that it's cut off. It doesn't make sense when I say it, but when you see what I do, it kind of will make sense. So you can see that some parts are already cut, but I'm going to be using my trimmer to cut just in between those bits that are already cut with a straight line, so that I'll have just some parts of the image below the cut line, and they'll be sort of die cut with the matching die. So it's very hard to see what I'm actually doing here, but I'm just using this paper trimmer blade just to cut tiny little bits in between where the die has actually made the cuts. Now, sometimes it cut through nice and cleanly. Some bits I missed completely, so I've just got out my craft blade here to cut one little bit that just didn't cut through at all. And I'm just using my scissors to just cut the last little bits that were not quite cut off properly, and it should just pop out. So you can see there that parts of that image have been cut by the die and parts with my trimmer. All right, so this is the card that I'm casing today. This photo actually has two cards. I'm casing the one on the left. And you can see that in Therese's card, her floral and leafy image is hanging down over the edge of her little white panel at the top of the card and hanging down over a navy blue image. And she's got a white embossed sentiment there. So I did a really, really similar card, but with a different image, but I changed it up by making my cut on an angle. Another difference is that Therese actually put some 3D elements. So some of her flowers were actually die cut separately and were popped up on top of the other images, whereas mine are just all flat, and I'm going to Copic colour them. But before I do, I'm just lining up my sentiment that I'm going to be stamping onto my navy blue cardstock that's going to be the front of my card. I decided not to make the whole card out of navy blue cardstock because I like having a white card base, so that the whole inside of the card is white. So I decided just to have this navy blue panel just stuck straight onto the front of the card. So I've coated my cardstock with some anti-static powder tool, because when you're going to emboss in white embossing powder onto a dark cardstock like navy, it's very useful to not get the embossing powder where you don't want it. So the embossing powder, the anti-static embossing powder is a must. All right, so I've used some Hero Arts white embossing powder there to emboss my image, and I just rubbed off my anti-static powder very easily with a dry cloth. And now I'm going to move on to my Copic Coloring. So I'm going to turn on some music and just let you enjoy this colouring, and I'll be back a little bit. So that's all done, and for those of you who like to know what my Copic colours are, there you go. And now I'm going to move on to actually constructing my card. So I'm just using some tape runner here to adhere my navy panel with my sentiment on it to my white card base. I always use Neenah Solar White in the 110 pound. I feel that that makes the best card base so that the card will stand up all by itself without flopping over. I'm using some foam adhesive here on the back of my coloured and partially die-cut panel so that it will sit up and give a little bit of dimension to this card. So just removing all of that backing paper from those bits of foam adhesive, and just to line it up, I generally just turn the card upside down and then hold both of them up against my work surface, so I've got at least one edge perfectly straight, and then I can use my fingers to make sure the left and right side are perfectly straight as well. Alright, so I just decided that I wanted to add a little bit of sparkle, not a heap, so I'm just using a wink of Stella brush here to just go over the holly leaves here. I decided there wasn't enough of the sparkle coming out of my pen, so I just gave it a quick shake and that was more effective. So I'm just going over some of those earlier leaves that I didn't think had enough sparkle on them. You can never have too much sparkle. And I just realised that one of the berries I didn't colour in. So one of those berries that I think is meant to represent a mistletoe berry, I just coloured in with a very, very pale E marker. Now I'm using some little sort of, not exactly gemstones, sort of dewdrop things from Trinity Stamps, which are, I think they're called Bubble Bath. They have this beautiful iridescence to them, and I'm just going to adhere them with a tiny little drop of liquid glue from Hero Arts. And then I'm done. So thank you very much for joining me today to see how I made this card. And thank you so much to Therese for being my inspiration and my guest for today. Make sure you check out my blog with a link to her blog to see what she's come up with today. Thanks very much. Bye.